Be rich. How to live in Boulder? Be rich. That's it. No, seriously though, Boulder, Colorado is one of the most beautiful places to live along the Front Range. The city is well known across the country, and there are so many reasons why work, play, or both will bring you to the city. But it's really expensive, as I'm sure you're already aware. And so I'm willing to bet there's a point of friction here on you thinking whether it's even a possible place to live. Well, the answer is yes, it's possible. There's two options available on how to live in Boulder, Colorado, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s. Apart from outright buying a house or a condo. But you're gonna have to be a bit flexible here. Let me explain. So the first option is simple. Rent with your friends and family. Wow. Groundbreaking, right? Thanks, Ethan. But I'm being serious. This is more so an option, I'll stress, if you're determined to live inside the city itself. Boulder, Colorado is not really a place where you're living in a sizable one-bedroom apartment alone and not worried about the cost. At the time of this video, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Boulder is $1,904 with an average size of 670 square feet. So if your current income is high and an almost $2,000 a month rent bill, excluding utilities by the way, doesn't faze you, well, perhaps the size will. You're gonna have to ask yourself whether $1,900 a month is worth a 670 square foot apartment. If we look at bigger apartments, the average rent for a 2-bedroom is $2,413 with an average size of 936 square feet. And then for 3-bedroom apartments, the average rent is $3,641 with an average size of 1,224 square feet. So if you were to rent a 2-bedroom apartment with a friend or family member, you're paying around $1,206 for rent. In a 3-bedroom, perhaps with 2 close friends, your rent would be around $1,213. So you're saving around $700 for either option compared to just renting a 1-bedroom apartment yourself. However, let's not forget the square footage. 1,224 square feet for 3 people is cozy. From a price per square foot perspective, the 2-bedroom apartment is actually the best, but it's still sub 1,000 square feet. Honestly, with that information, I'd recommend looking for a house to rent if size is important to you. Not necessarily some of the more luxurious properties closer to downtown, because those are gonna run closer to $5,000 a month plus. I've even seen some around $12,000. But if you're looking for a place with more space, then I'd recommend a house. Now to set expectations here, the median square footage of properties in Boulder is about 2,500 square feet. So properties with a lower rent are more likely going to have a smaller square footage, of course. However, you can still find sizable homes close to the center of Boulder. And if you're renting with a couple other people, it'll make the monthly bill a lot easier to handle. One thing to keep in mind with regards to the square footage is that it's a measurement of the interior, naturally, but doesn't necessarily count the lot size of the property, aka the front and backyard, especially if you have pets. This might be a much better option for them instead of necessarily being cooped up in an apartment complex. But there are some pros to living in an apartment too. It can be a lot closer to the center of downtown and not egregiously high in rent. Homes closer to downtown naturally are going to be older and more expensive. Plus, the amenities provided by the apartment complexes might negate the con of size. Really, it depends on what you're looking for, but the driving point here is rent with a few other people. Now the second option would be to live in the surrounding towns around Boulder. But didn't I just tell you this video was about how to live in Boulder, Colorado? Yes, however, many people in the Boulder, Colorado area subscribe to the work in Boulder and live outside of Boulder mindset. One reason is the cost, of course, but another is going to be the size of places to rent, as we've just found out. Plus, a lot of these surrounding towns are really close by, so the commute into the city isn't too bad. And if you found that Boulder, Colorado was not offering great places to live, but there was a great apartment or home to rent just 25 minutes down the road in one of the neighboring towns, wouldn't you want to know about it? So now let's look at a few alternative locations. The first would be Longmont to the north. This town is about 25 minutes away, and it's a beautiful town just northeast of Boulder with fantastic views of the Front Range. And it's a lot easier on the wallet. The median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,628 a month, so already around $275 cheaper than Boulder. Plus, the median size here is around 728 square feet, so cheaper and larger. For a 3-bedroom home, the median rent is $2,550, which is $1,300 cheaper than the 3-bedroom home median in Boulder. And then the square footage for homes in Longmont, specifically for a 3-bed, is estimated to be around 1,822. Now, Longmont is known for having smaller homes compared to other surrounding suburbs. It is an older town, but even then, it's still outperforming Boulder and is a much more affordable option. Now let's take a look at Louisville. This is a town located just southeast of Boulder, about a 20-minute drive away. It's another spot to live that offers easy access into the city, but a bit more privacy compared to living right smack in the center of Boulder. The median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment here is around $1,841 a month. Now, not as affordable as Longmont per se, but still more so than Boulder. But I would argue that if you're considering living in this suburb, look for a house instead. The median rent for a 3-bedroom home in Louisville is around $2,950 a month, and the median size of properties in this town is around 2,700 square feet. There are a lot more single-family homes in Louisville, especially given the fact that 70% of its residents own their own properties. It's not as heavier a renter town as some of the other suburbs. However, there are options here that can give you a more suburban experience as a renter compared to living right in Boulder. Now let's look at one more town, and that's Broomfield. This one is just a bit farther southeast from Boulder. It's about a 20 to 30-minute drive into the city, depending on where you are. But you are also closer to Denver too, so keep that in mind. This town is about the same size as Longmont, but has much more of a suburban look to it, especially being so close to Denver. The median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment here is around $1,795 a month, for an average size of 754 square feet. So a little bit more expensive than Longmont, but also a bit bigger. It seems to have the biggest 1-bedroom apartment so far. And there are also a ton of apartment complexes in Broomfield, a lot right along Route 36, which makes sense because if you're commuting into either Boulder or Denver for work, you're gonna want easy access to this highway. But if you're looking for a home to rent instead, the median rent for a 3-bedroom home is $2,945 a month, and the median size for properties in Broomfield is around 2,735 square feet. So rent in Broomfield is a few $100s more than Longmont, but the homes here are also 50% larger. That can be important, especially if you're looking for a place with size. So I'd say, looking at the 3 closest towns to Boulder, that you might be considering Longmont or Broomfield. Of course, if Louisville caught your eye, definitely watch my videos on this suburb. Now, it's pretty clear, given the numbers we just discovered, that living in this part of Colorado is more expensive than not. Living anywhere near Denver is going to be a bit tougher on price than other areas of the country, except probably big cities like New York City, LA, or San Francisco. So perhaps in order to make this work, you may consider doing a blend of both strategies. I would definitely recommend any possible option that reduces the amount of total rent you're paying and saves you money. But of course, learning about the cost of living in these towns is important. But what you're gonna need to do next is look and see, what are the towns like? Do they fit your style? Could you see yourself living there? So I have 2 videos for you here that go a bit more in depth into the pros and cons of Longmont and Broomfield. This is something I strongly recommend watching after this. It'll help paint better pictures of both towns. I think you'll find it helpful. This is Life in the Front Range. I'll see you there.